Good morning, I am Maria Noel Groves, and today is our first ever herb walk video. And it's winter, it's snowing a little bit, it's pretty chilly out, and we're going to talk about one of my favorite evergreen trees here in the northeastern forest, and that is hemlock. And so we'll take a quick peek at hemlock in just a moment. The hemlock tree is pretty common in our neck of the woods here in New Hampshire and throughout the Northeast, and it has these little needles in single bunches. It sort of looks a little bit like a fir. It has flat needles and has these little white lines on the underside, if you can see that. It just has kind of like two little white lines on either underside. Hemlock also produces these little itty-bitty cones that droop down, and they're really quite cute. An interesting feature of hemlock is if you decide to decorate with it, maybe bring it inside as a Christmas tree or make a wreath with it in wintertime, the needles fall off really easily. So as soon as it dries, all you have to do is tap the branch and all the needles come tink, 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 falling down. And that actually means it makes a great tea medicine because it's really easy to process, but not so great for decorating your house, even though it is quite pretty. One of the things I love to do is I'll just go ahead and take a nibble. Sometimes I'll nibble straight from the tree and have a few needles, and those needles are going to give you kind of like an aromatic, little bit tangy flavor. You'll be able to taste that kind of evergreen Christmas tree-like flavor. It has very similar properties to other evergreens in the same plant family, including pine, fir, spruce, the hemlock tree, which is Tsuga canadensis is the species that we're working with right now. Douglas firs, which are in another part of the country, have similar properties. So not all evergreens can be used the same way, but many of them that are in that pine family, like these ones, can all be used pretty similarly. So some of the ways that you can use this plant, mainly we're working with the needles, although there are applications for the bark and the inner bark as well. But when we're using the needles, we're using them for their evergreeny essential oils. They taste really good. They'll give a nice brightness to your tea blends. You can use them in aromatherapy. You can use them as a mild digestive, bitter, aromatic, carminative herb, and just also has a general benefit, as you might expect, as an expectorant. And for cough syrups, it helps thin mucus, move mucus, and clear things out. It's very rich in bioflavonoids, which can be helpful for supporting the immune system, allergies, sinus infections, has some antimicrobial activity in those essential oils and aromatics that are in the evergreen needles, and so forth. So many different applications. You can use it in your bath, you can use it in your tea, you can make tinctures with it, elixirs. It would make a really delicious syrup for cocktails and so forth if you wanted to go that way, or you could use it as a syrup, as a cough syrup. Make herbal honeys with it. The downside to hemlock really is that it has been, it shares a name with hemlock and poison hemlock. It is completely unrelated to poison hemlock and water hemlock, which are really deadly poisonous plants. But this here is an evergreen and really lacks any of the same properties whatsoever. So it's kind of got a deficiency in marketing in that it is just, it shares this name with this deadly poisonous herb. There used to be a spruce essential oil that you could get from Mountain Rose Herbs, and if you looked at the Latin name, it was actually hemlock essential oil, because they can be used so interchangeably. They're practically the same essential oil when you get down to the constituents of it, even though they're different trees, they're in the same plant family. But now when you buy spruce essential oil, it actually is spruce, the spruce tree rather than the hemlock tree. And you can use this as a digestive bitter. You can use it for rheumatism and achiness. It kind of moves things in a similar way that you might use pine or juniper for those same things. And just a really pleasant herb. Unfortunately, it is being taken down by a little bug called the woolly adelgid, and sometimes you'll see cobwebby appearances all over it. They can really do quite a number of damage and kill off trees. So while this plant is very abundant in my neck of the woods, we are seeing a decline in it because of this little insect that is taking it over. So it may no longer become a really common plant that we can use medicinally. We may need to protect it in different ways. So I hope you enjoyed my little quick video. There are some Native American uses. I haven't worked with it this way, but you can use the outer bark for its rich tannins and use it for tanning leather and so forth. So it has an old traditional use for that, which is pretty common for a lot of trees in our eastern and our northeastern forests are really high in tannins and can be used as a really potent astringent to tighten and tone leather and so forth. Not something we would generally take internally because they're just really too strong in those tannins. And then the inner bark, once you take away that high tannin outer bark, is sometimes pounded into a flour and used in by Native Americans, especially in the olden days, as a source of sustenance in the winter time, but not so often used that way now because there's easier access to other foods. And it's important to note that evergreens in general, especially hemlock and white pine and balsam fir, are very rich in vitamin C in their needles, and so you can harvest those needles and make tea with it fresh or dry and get a little bit of vitamin C as well as other bioflavonoids. So I hope you explore and find some hemlocks in your woods and just get to know them. I like to just nibble the needles a little bit, and it's a great way to connect with the forest and connect with the plants around you. So hope you enjoyed this herb walk, and we'll be back later for more.